Hi, my name is Bonnie Burkhart. I'm the first Vice President for the Virginia Federation of Republican Women, VFRW, and we welcome you all to this wonderful debate. We have a great slate of candidates here that are running for governor, and we are going to enjoy a wonderful evening tonight. Let me turn it over to our President of VFRW, Paula Steiner, who's going to get us started.
Thank you, everyone. It's such a wonderful turnout, and it's so wonderful to see so many familiar faces in the room and new Republican friends. Thank you for being here tonight to support our candidates. Since 1953, the Virginia Federation of Republican Women continues to be the largest grassroots organization in Virginia, with our 1,700 members and 45 clubs. We train, elect leaders to local government, state government, and national offices. Like you, a key concern is election integrity. By partnering with the VFRW, you are joining us to be a part of an important voice for the party on all levels. Thank you for fighting with us for American liberty. We eagerly anticipate a vigorous and healthy debate tonight. We also assure you that VFRW will not faint from our mission to promote Republican principles, protect election integrity, educate voters on legislation, policies, and increase the impact of Republican women in elected office. We ask you to come soar with us on wings like eagles. We have lost 3 very important women in our federation as of late. We remember Mary Ramey, past president of the VFRW, Alice Butler Short, president of the Republican Women of Clifton, Ann Seaton, president of Greater Augusta Republican Women. We ask you to take a moment of silence and remember these Yellow Rose Sentinels who are now angels. Thank you. Thank you very much, and it is my pleasure now to bring Rich Anderson, the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia.
Good evening, fellow Virginia Republicans. Are you ready to win this year on November 2nd? November 2nd is within our grasp. First off, let me express the appreciation of the Republican Party of Virginia to the Virginia Federation of Republican Women for sponsoring these gubernatorial discussions tonight. Thank you so much, Paula, and to the members of the VFRW family. This is a defining moment in the life of our party because we will gather in less than 2 weeks to nominate 3 candidates to carry our party colors across the finish line on November the 2nd. And on May 8th, we will gather in 39 locations around our Commonwealth in order to do so. And after that, we will hand count those ballots in a highly transparent process and a surety of the outcome. The great thing is that we will nominate these candidates 1 month before our Democrat opponents do so. And that is a strategic advantage. And they will represent our party. They will take the fight on the road to the 4 corners of our Commonwealth, where our fellow Virginia citizens live, work, and serve. And that message will be one of reopening schools, businesses, and livelihoods, revitalizing the flat McAuliffe Northern economy and restoring jobs, and getting to the bottom of the Democrat parole board scandal that started with McAuliffe and continues today, covered up by Northam and General Assembly Democrats. That's vital that we do that, among other things, among many other things, and you'll hear visions tonight about how we achieve that. Tonight, I would ask that you give our candidates your full attention because they certainly deserve it. And know that among them, the 7, there sits an individual who I believe with every fiber of my being, every cell in my body, will take the oath in middle of January as the next governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I say that because they're great Americans, they're great Virginians, they're great candidates. I say that because all of you in this room and across our Commonwealth are great Republicans who are committed to victory in November. And they are ready to unify after May the 8th behind 3 distinguished candidates who will carry our colors beyond the finish line. And our party is significantly fired up like it has never been before since 2009. That was the year I first ran and was elected to the General Assembly. Our ticket was led by Bob McDonald. I have not seen this fire, this vigor, this energy at this level since, and that's very important. And I'll tell you how that has played out. As of this afternoon, we have this many delegates to the RPV State Convention on May the 8th. 53,524 delegates. And ladies and gentlemen, intuitively and indisputably, that is the largest state party convention ever in American history. We are going to win. And now let us begin this evening's discussion, and let us go forth to magnificent victories on November the 2nd. And with that, I would ask that you please bow your heads with me. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather as free Americans, to gather around our political beliefs, joined in our love for our Creator, joined in our love for our country, joined in our love for our Commonwealth, and committed to the premise that we are privileged to live in the greatest nation the world has ever known. And so, Father, we would ask that you hold these 7 candidates up, the men and women who seek to serve as the chief executive of this great Commonwealth. And although the other candidates are not here, we ask that you uphold, lift up, and nurture our candidates for Lieutenant Governor and for Attorney General. And now, with that, Father, please bless these proceedings, not only tonight, but here on out. And we thank you for the privilege of being able to serve. We ask this in your most precious and holy name. Amen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please be standing and join me as we pledge allegiance to our mighty flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Born and unborn. Thank you so much. You may be seated.
I would like to introduce our National Committee woman, Patty Lyman, who's going to read the Republican Creed. It is on the back of your book, the last page of your booklet. You may follow along if you like at the last page of your booklet.
Thank you. Virginia Republican Creed. We believe that the free enterprise system is the most productive supplier of human needs and economic justice, that all individuals are entitled to equal rights, justice, and opportunities, and should assume their responsibilities as citizens in a free society, that fiscal responsibility and budgetary restraints must be exercised at all levels of government, that the federal government must preserve individual liberty by observing constitutional limitations, that peace is best preserved through a strong national defense, that faith in God, as recognized by our founding fathers, is essential to the moral fiber of the nation.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce our National Federation of Republican Women President, Ann Shockett. Please give her a round of applause. Ann, unfortunately, the cord doesn't stretch that far. You have to come over.
I want to know if everyone can hear me without the microphone.
No, they can't hear you.
No?
They can't
Okay.
hear you on the internet.
Okay. Oh, very good. I want to thank you, President Paula, for inviting me to say a few words about the National Federation of Republican Women, and I'd like to recognize NFRW Political Director Terry Hauser. And I'd like to congratulate you, Paula, and the VFRW for hosting this very important debate. We've been through a tough year, made tougher by your governor, our governor. And I say this because, you see, while all NFRW presidents are required to live in Virginia for their term of office, Peter and I are seriously considering finding a home here in Virginia. But it doesn't seem much of an improvement trading in Governor Cuomo in for Governor Northam. My friends, this past year we've had to survive a pandemic and shutdowns, anarchy on our streets, and bad actors in seats of government, from this governor all the way to the current president in the White House. All that we have been through serves as a poignant reminder that we can never take anything in our lives for granted. Every moment is precious, and every decision that we make has far-reaching implications. That's especially true when it comes to the people we choose to run for office and the people whom we elect. That's why during elections 2020, NFRW mobilized an unprecedented number of strike forces throughout our nation. I was in 8 states despite COVID, and thousands of my NFRW sisters joined me on the ground and also phone banking from home. Paula, Jill, Nancy, and so many others, and the strong team of volunteers from Virginia joined me and Terry in Georgia. And I have this little announcement to make tonight, that NFRW strike forces will be here in Virginia. Virginia is a battleground, perhaps the battleground in the United States in 2021. For that reason, NFRW was so pleased to partner with Paula and VFRW to bring our renowned campaign management school for candidate training here last month. We had the first hybrid class ever in the history of NFRW, and that's a long history, 83 years. But NFRW had many firsts this past year, and Republicans across the country have taken notice. As the women of our country become engaged and enraged at the course that the left is charting for us, they're turning to NFRW. And ladies and gentlemen, we have 36 new clubs already this year added to the over 1,200 that we have. Wow is right. We're heightening our communications to bypass the cancel culture of the media. We've actually just added a new multimedia broadcast studio in headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia, to address the timely issues of our day. And while NFRW has to remain neutral prior to the nomination, consider this an open invitation to whomever is chosen to please come by and be interviewed at the new studio. And also to join us at the spring board meeting the weekend after your convention. Tonight's debate is going to help delegates choose the candidates who will lead the ticket to take back Virginia. Women are a powerful voice in deciding the outcomes of elections. Tonight, we must listen very carefully, and we must make very wise choices. The nation is watching you, Virginia. They're watching you. They're watching us. And we have to look out for our future and for theirs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. What I would like to do now is go over some of the rules for the debate. First, for the audience, all right? I would like you to kindly all silence your cell phones and beepers. And please do not use the Springfield Golf and Country Club Wi-Fi, because that is how we are streaming to our online audience. Okay? While the candidates are debating, we ask that there are no comments from the audience, and you hold your applause until we come to a break or we come to the end of the debate. Also, please, no pictures, videos, or live streaming, because we have that service available for you. For the candidates, there will be each candidate will be given a 30-second intro and a 1-minute closing statement. The questions, each question, they will have a 1-minute response. The questions are answered in the order in your program, in a pseudo-random order, and you can see the order in which the candidates will answer each question. The responses should be factually accurate, but no interruptions of another person's minute, and no personal attacks. Please, the candidates can use their 1 minute as they so choose to address the question at hand, to rebuff a prior comment, or to address a policy of their opponent. Now I would like to introduce our moderators. Okay. First, our first moderator is Paula Steiner. She has a bachelor's degree in political science and Spanish and a master's of arts in political science. She's a contributing writer with several publications with Real Clear Politics and Political. She has a small business for over 10 years, consulting in education, transportation, economic development, federal grant writing, and grassroots advocacy. She served over 12 years at the U.S. House of Representatives on staff, most recently as the Deputy Chief of Staff, including running legislative operations. So I would like to welcome our VFRW President, Ms. Paula Steiner. And I will have Martha Banana, who's going to introduce Larry O'Connor.
Thank you so much. Hello, Virginia Federation of Republican Women. Before I make the next introduction, I wanted to ask if we could have everybody raise your hand if you've served in our armed forces in the military representing our beloved United States of America. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Thank you for your sacrifice and your service to our great nation. Republican women are the heartbeat of the Republican Party, am I right? Yeah, right. And not only in Virginia, but all across our nation have lifted up thousands and thousands of Republicans into elected office. God bless you all, and thank you. It is my privilege and my honor to introduce you to a conservative rock star that is heard in thousands of households all across the country. Please join me in welcoming Larry O'Connor. We are so blessed, aren't we, to have Larry O'Connor moderate this evening with us, aren't we? Let me tell you a little bit about Larry O'Connor. He hosts, as if you all didn't know, The Larry O'Connor Show. It's the political, pop culture, and lifestyle talk show heard daily from 3 to 6 p.m. on WMAL-FM in Washington, D.C., and from 10 a.m. to noon on KABC in Los Angeles. He appears regularly, and I know you all know this, on Fox and on Tucker Carlson. He is on Fox News at night with Shannon Bream, Spicer and Company. That is Sean Spicer, of course. On Newsmax, Barney and Company, Fox Big Business, and was a regular on the cult hit Red Eye with Greg Gutfeld. Additionally, he's a senior columnist and creative director at townhall.com. Prior to joining Town Hall, his writings have appeared on Hot Air, The Federalist, Washington Free Beacon, IJ Review, and Andrew Breitbart's original website, Big Hollywood, Big Government, and of course, my favorite, Breitbart TV. Larry is married to recovering journalist, you gotta love that, Meredith Dake O'Connor. They have 4 children, Quinn, a junior at UCLA, Veronica, a midshipman at the U.S. Naval Academy. Christian, a sophomore in high school and EJ, an 8th grader. Friends, Larry O'Connor, every single day, drives the left crazy. And we are so blessed to have him. Please welcome again my friend, Larry O'Connor.
Oh, thank you, Martha. Thank you. She said it just how I wrote it for her. That's fantastic.
Thank you, Martha. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, our candidates. So I'm going to ask each of the candidates to come up here and stand so we can all take a great picture before we get started. First, we have Glenn Youngkin. Please come. Amanda Chase. Kurt Cox. Peter Doran. Sergio Della Pina. And Octavia Johnson. Thank you all. And while they are taking their seat, we do have one candidate who is not with us, which is Pete Snyder. And what we have done is we are going to allow Miss Ginny Thomas, which you may recognize her. She's a great advocate and is the wife of she's Mrs. Clarence Thomas and the wife of Justice Clarence Thomas. So you are a wonderful advocate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is so exciting to all be here together without masks and to wear new clothes that we haven't seen for so long, isn't it? So I just want to say thank you. Pete Snyder is sorry. He apologizes. He could not join all you great people here today, all you great people online too. And he had a commitment that he made a long time ago, and he just hopes Paula forgives him and all of you. I just want to say I'm happy to join Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Ken Cuccinelli, and there's 4 reasons why I love Pete Snyder. And yet, I want to say, I hope at the end of the day, we will all support the Republican nominee. Can I get an amen? Amen. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say he's not a career politician. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's a businessman. And we've seen one of those in office, and it kind of works, doesn't it? Second, he's a man who takes action in a crisis. He and his wife put together that 30-day fund and helped 2,700 small business people across the country. Not many people do that. And he's also a fellow traveler in the conservative circles. And he's running as a conservative, you guys. It's so exciting. And so I am honored to be a part of his campaign, and I'm honored to be here today with so many friends. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership. And have a great debate.
Thank you very much. All right, candidates, if you'd like to take your seat. All right, we're about to begin, and I would like to introduce Debbie Bodlander, who is going to be our timekeeper. So please stand so everyone knows who you are. She keeps you in line, I warn you.
I've got a 1 minute and a 30 seconds. And I have to give credit to my husband, the Democrat, who made it happen.
She gives credit to her husband, the Democrat, who made the paddles for her. So, all right, we are going to start with a 30-second opening comment, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to Paula Steiner, who will do it. And you have the order in which you speak in your program.
Good evening, candidates. Thanks for being here, and thank you again for that warm welcome. It is an honor to be here, and I'm always reminded that we are so privileged to be able to participate in an event like this where so many in this world are not able to do this. They're not able to use their voice and their vote to select their leaders, and it's because of incredible, brave Virginians who sacrificed their lives and livelihoods since before our founding to be able to ensure this freedom and liberty for us. So it's right that we're here in Virginia to continue this great American tradition. You know the rules, candidates. You've got the order in front of you that was randomly selected for each question. I fundamentally reject the idea that because somebody is a broadcaster or has a skill set of having a good hairdo and can read a teleprompter or has, God forbid, a journalism degree, that they are in some way gifted by God to be able to ask questions of politicians. I think we're better off by having CEOs and small businessmen and And moms and dads and teachers and everyone from every walk of life quiz our elected officials. That said, I am honored to be here, and everyone at WMAL really takes this incredibly seriously. It's our responsibility to ensure that everyone who listens to us is an informed voter, and to that end, I appreciate all of you over the past several months coming on our program. I know a few of you are still scheduled to come on before the convention day, and I'm looking forward to that. And I guarantee you, Mr. Snyder is due to be on later in this week, and I'll ask him the toughest questions you guys have tonight, all right? So we will make sure we do that. Don't put us in the position of having to enforce rules, please. I don't want to be Chris Wallace tonight. God forbid. To that end, let's begin with our opening statements. Again, these orders have all been done in random. We begin with Mr. Youngkin.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you to the VFRW for hosting tonight. My name is Glenn Youngkin. I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative. I'm a political outsider. I've never run for office before. I have a 30-year business career. I know how to build business and create jobs. And I'm a Republican who can and will win. And folks, elections have consequences. And we must beat Terry McAuliffe in November. And I was recently recognized as the only candidate who could do that. Friends, when I get to go work for all of you as your governor, we're going to open up this economy and get moving. We're going to protect our constitutional rights. We're going to get our schools open and introduce school choice. Friends, we are absolutely going to stand up for those that stand up for us, our law enforcement heroes. And we're going to press forward with election integrity. And that's going to include showing up to vote with a photo ID. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Glenn Youngkin, and I am running hard to earn your vote. Elections have consequences, and the consequences for Virginians over the last 8 years have been crushing. As you go to the ballot on May 8th, and I know many of you have yet to make your decision, I ask you to prayerfully consider selecting the candidate that can and will win in November. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Virginia State Senator Amanda Chase. I'm a second-term state senator. And what I'm here to tell you today is that voting records matter. I'm the only candidate running this year that has a conservative 100% rating, whether we're talking about the life issue, whether we're talking about the Second Amendment, whether we're talking about business. On all these issues, it's hard to get higher than 100%. So I'm a voting record that you can count on. But let me tell you something. You should believe Terry McAuliffe whenever he says that I'm in the front runner in this race. And I don't know if you got the email right before we got here that I did, but he is calling me the front runner of this race. 3 of 3 polls have confirmed that. I am the first female to ever seek the Republican nomination for governor. And friends, I believe that's going to be a big advantage for us this year as we seek to win back independents and Democrats and people who have left our party. We are going to bring them back, and together we will make Virginia great again. Thank you.
Well, I'm Kurt Cox, and I think the key question is, who can you trust to actually get the job done? Who on day one actually has the experience? And I'm the only one, I would tell you, that has that leadership experience. I was blessed to be both the majority leader and the speaker. You have to be elected by your peers to do that. I was the one as speaker that killed the Kathy Tron bill that had made abortion up until birth legal. I was the one that fought Terry McAuliffe on the floor on 2A. And so that man in the arena is what you need to beat Terry McAuliffe. And let me say this, I come from the bluest Republican district in the state. It is 46% Republican, 30% minority. And when I had Michael Bloomberg, Planned Parenthood, Tom Steyer put up $1.5 million against me, I won that race by 4 points, proving conservative leadership that can win. Thank y'all very much.
Republicans, Virginia Federation of Republican Women, it is an honor to be here with you tonight. And I want to thank all of my fellow Republican gubernatorial candidates who have come to this debate and continue to come to these debates. I respect every one of you for doing so. You know, it was when Daniel Gade hosted with his new mission PAC a forum many weeks ago, it seems like 8 years ago at this point, Daniel, I said, I think it's time that we Republican candidates, we have a debate. And we have been having that debate, and I've seen every one of you on those forums. Tonight, I want you to listen very closely to what you hear. And I want you to keep asking yourself this question. Who here among all these very fine candidates has a vision, a winning vision for how we're going to lead as Republicans, as conservatives? I believe I have that vision, but I think we need to get specific. I think we need to get off the slogans and start saying specifically what it is we mean to do. Tonight, part of my vision, Virginia should be the best. We are going to phase out the state income tax and go to 0%. I'm going to talk about that, but keep remembering who has a vision.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Sergio de la Peña, and with your permission, with your vote, I'll be your next governor. The question we need to be asking is, who can win in a general election? We keep putting the same type of candidate forward, and we keep losing. We've not kept track of the demographics of this Commonwealth. Virginia is now 20% Hispanic and 17% Asian. Those are immigrant communities that we have not reached out to. I can reach out to those communities because I am that immigrant. I can reach out to the military communities because I am that soldier. So I ask for your support, and I ask for your vote. I ask to be your next governor. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I want to thank the Virginia Federation of Republican Women for putting on this event. You are great women. And I am Octavia Johnson, former sheriff of Roanoke City. And this great state was built on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if we are not careful, and if we all don't go and do what we're supposed to do and vote in unity on November the 2nd, this foundation is eroding. So we need to put a stop to it. So we need to elect a governor that will fight the battles that need to be fought, that will take the punches that the Democrats will throw at them. I know how to take punches, so I asked for your support. Thank you.
Beginning round one, question one on election integrity. This was submitted by the Republican Women of Greater Richmond. Please explain in detail your plan to ensure we have election integrity in Virginia, and in particular, if Dominion voting systems and machines are used on November 3rd, 2021, will you immediately pursue an independent audit of the results when you are sworn in as governor?
How much time do they have?
They have 1 minute each.
Well, that's an excellent question. The first thing that we have to do, though, is before we have to get as many of you mobilized so that we can have a fair election, so that we can even get there. And that's going to require many of you to become election officials. We've got to have you there because we need you at every place, because we've gone from a voting day to a voting season. In answer to the question, yes, we will make sure that this is going to be a fair election once we've gotten in. And then from then on, we've got to make sure there's audits and that we have the commissions put in place to be able to ensure that we go back to something that resembles what we had back in 2016, when you could verify identification, when you made sure that the counts were properly conducted and that they were auditable. We've got to restore voter integrity. I've been in Venezuela. I saw what Chavez did. He destroyed voter integrity, and we're headed in the same direction. That's the way socialists take over. They start with the electoral process, and then they start with the indoctrination of the schools, and then they go on with everything else, and you've seen where that's happening. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most important issue we're going to talk about right now. It was the first topic we raised in our candidacy. Our Election Integrity Task Force was launched week 1. This is not a Republican issue. This is not a Democrat issue. But remember, Hillary Clinton complained like crazy. They stole the election from me. Folks, this is a democracy issue. And we launched right out of the box 5 steps to restore our trust in our election process. Number one, our Department of Elections will be made independent and transparent. Number two, the voter rolls will be updated every 30 days, and if you have sadly died or moved away, guess what? You're not allowed to vote. You'll actually have to show up for every election with a Commonwealth of Virginia issued photo ID. This is not controversial. You need one to get a library card in Virginia. If you need a mail-in ballot, you'll fill out your application and prove you're a citizen, and it'll be 2 signatures when you send it back in. And finally, those voting machines will indeed be tested before and audited within 30 days, and it'll be made public so everybody will know that this election was fair. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Republicans, I'm Peter Duran, and you're getting to know all of us here, but I think this is one of those examples where we get excited. We get excited because we look at the bench of Republicans, and among all the things we could possibly disagree on, this is one issue that unites every single one of the gubernatorial candidates. Because every one of us, we intend to be your nominee, every one of us is looking forward to our November election, and every one of us wants to know what you want to know. That on the night of the election, we can all go to bed that night and wake up the next morning and know promptly who won, and have confidence that whoever is the winner, that winner reflects the will of Virginia's voters. My plan is to do what Florida has done. Yeah, Glenn, absolutely. We're going to make sure that we have a voter ID for everyone. We talk about voter integrity. Washington Post says, what does Peter Duran mean by that, voter integrity? And I was like, well, I want to make sure that everyone who votes is a living, breathing human being, and they had a right to cast a legal ballot. We're going to follow Florida's plan and how they cleaned up their election system. We're going to be the best in this country when it comes to voter and election integrity.
I've been asked to remind you, and I'm sorry, I don't get paid nearly as much as Chris Wallace, but here we go. I have been asked to remind you that we are holding our applause after each statement, no matter how enthused you are. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I think Peter brings up a really good point. I was actually in Florida this weekend meeting with General Flynn, who has endorsed my campaign for governor, and meeting with top election officials in the good state of Florida. And you're right, they have done a great job exposing the voting fraud that has occurred in Florida. And what about Virginia? Listen, friends, I have been very vocal about election fraud. I was actually censured over it in the Virginia Senate when I said that the 2020 presidential election was stolen. And then I had the audacity to go to the January 6th Stop the Steal rally to support our president. The Democrats on the floor of the Senate wanted me to apologize. And they would take away the censure. I said, no, I'll go back to my seat now. You go ahead. I'll be the second state senator in Virginia's history to receive a censure because I stood up for our political free speech rights and to contest these election results. Now, going back to the question of Dominion voting systems, I think we should put them in a bonfire and burn them. That's my solution.
Please.
Yes, we know that there is voter fraud. In Roanoke, 2 people were just convicted of voter fraud. So yes, integrity we must pursue. And as governor, I will work that we have voter ID. And also, the voter rolls would be audited, changed over monthly. I know some people that lived in Grayson County, moved to Roanoke, and they were still on their voter roll, and that was in 1989, and they had lived in Roanoke for several years. So we will have audits and also look at the personnel that is working in the voter registrations. Thank you.
Our next question, candidates, is line number 3 on your order of speaking.
We have...
I am so sorry, Mr. Cox. I apologize. I'm just, wanting to get right to traffic and weather. Apologize every 10 minutes.
That was quick. That was so
sorry. Got to move the show along.
Well, let me start with this. Certainly the voting machines should be audited and tested. Let me tell you what the Democrats are. I put a bill on this year that would say that the State Board of Elections should be 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and the governor should not pick the commissioner, but the board should. Guess what they did at 7 o'clock in the morning? They killed that bill in 5 minutes. So I can assure you they're not interested in any of that whatsoever. And so sure, I was around when we actually put voter ID in. And don't forget, we've got other issues too. They put that bill in this year in the budget, $10 million for drop boxes, et cetera. So think of what they're doing budgetarily with that. And I'm going to sort of end with this, but we're going to need to be a little bit creative, folks. We are where we are. Kurt Cox won absentee ballots in my last election 2-1. And you're going to have to go after that type of vote if you're going to win. And so we both need to really talk about voter integrity, but we better aggressively go after the way the system works at absentee vote if you're going to actually win this election.
All right, and now our next question is line number 3 on your order of speaking candidates. And this comes to us from the George Mason Republican Women. James Madison, another Republican, wrote the Bill of Rights. Last time I checked, Virginians kind of give a heck about their Constitution. And as Mr. Youngkin said, yes, elections have consequences, and we saw that out of Richmond after this last election. Now that Democrats are in charge, this April, Governor Northam signed 5 bills into law imposing a variety of restrictions on the possession of and transactions involving firearms, including a red flag law. As governor, what gun legislation would you support that would simultaneously protect the safety as well as the constitutional rights of all Virginians?
The Constitution says we have the right to bear arms. So as governor, that's what I will be doing, is that we have every right to bear arms. So all laws that are put into effect would be for us to protect and bear arms for ourselves, and I would seek to repeal any of the laws that have been put in place, especially the red flag law. I mean, we have every right to have a gun in our homes, and who is it to call or report to you that you have guns because of your, you might have an attitude or whatever, and they call and report you, and then they come and seek to have your guns removed. Thank you.
Was a government teacher, actually had the privilege of teaching the Second Amendment. And it really, all the amendments hang on that. And if you think about it, that is the amendment that stops tyranny. The Founding Fathers understood that. Every socialist regime from Castro on will do that. So I think you'll see all of us up here talk about, we're not for red flag, we're obviously not for local option, et cetera. We'll all try to reverse that. And that's going to be very important. But I'll tell you once again, who's actually fought that fight is Majority Leader. I was the chief debater on the floor, that when Terry McAuliffe basically put those same bills in, we killed them, was the one that actually fought those bills tooth and nail, actually the debater on the floor. And I think that really means something. So who's been in the arena, who just doesn't talk 2A? So to me, I've really been that person. And so that is something we do have to fight for, because whether it be the First Amendment or any of the amendments, they hang on them. And so you will see Kurt Cox take that constitutional right and make it one of my priorities in a Cox administration.
Friends, I'm a gun owner. I'm a lifetime member of the NRA, and I understand exactly what it means for the people to have the right to keep and bear arms. The challenge we have right now is that we can talk about all the things that we want to do, and as governor, I'll have a pen, and I will be able to veto bills. But for us to push back, we must, in fact, take back our House of Delegates to the point where we can initiate legislation. And that's why we started Virginia Wins. Because the Republican Party, sadly, has not been able to push back against the flood of money coming into this state from George Soros and from others. And so we started Virginia Wins in order to support sheriff races, school board races, city council races, Commonwealth's attorney races, city council races, and oh, by the way, delegate races. And we are supporting dozens and dozens and dozens of these races across Virginia so that it will not be a lonely victory for me in November. But in fact, we will bring a whole crop of Republicans in, and we will take back our House of Delegates and be able to initiate legislation to push back on the encroachment of our Second Amendment. Thank you.
So the Second Amendment obviously is extremely important. As governor, I will do my best to ensure that we comply with what the Constitution says. It's not something that the states or the counties can arbitrarily decide that they're going to enforce. There's a reason why it is in the Bill of Rights. So all of these counties that have decided to create these gun-free zones are doing it in an unconstitutional manner. We need to start challenging those counties or those entities that feel that they have the right that is really a constitutional one that is at a higher level. So we need to get that back. I have an AQ rating. I didn't know what that was until just recently. I love guns. When I was in Venezuela, I used to go shoot them up all the time. There was a warehouse where they used to have a lot of guns when I was there. After Chavez came in, that place got full. Guess why? Because he wanted to take guns away from his citizens. We know how that ended. Thank you.
Larry, I want to thank you for your question because I think it reveals something very important, particularly on the Second Amendment issue. So you see, none of us are running to become a super legislator. None of us are running for the House of Delegates. We're running for governor. And if you're going to be governor, you have to have a vision, and you have to lead our Commonwealth. That's why I keep saying, my vision is that Virginia should be the best, and I mean it. We are going to be the best state in the country when it comes to defending your Second Amendment rights. But here's what we're going to do. Because as governor, I am going to make all of Virginia a constitutional Commonwealth. That means that if Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden pass an executive order or a law that violates your constitutional rights, your Second Amendment right, we're going to say no. And we will not enforce those laws here. And Joe, if you got a problem with that, we'll see you in court. And we will win, because that's the governor's job, to set out a vision and protect your rights. And for too long, we've had supine governors who've been lying around on the job and not defending your rights. We're going to be a constitutional Commonwealth.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is probably my top issue, having been in the state Senate. And I've been called Senator Annie Oakley, and I wear that like a badge of honor. I've been known to carry openly in the Capitol because of threats against my life. That's when I started open carrying in the Capitol. It's very serious. I have a 100% rating with VCDL, A rating with the NRA. Yes, I carry. I was also asked to be one of 2 legislators to speak at the annual VCDL rally where over 80,000 people showed up in support of the Second Amendment. But the question is this: what gun control legislation would you support? And the answer is none. Absolutely none. I would actually do what Terry McAuliffe did with Executive Order 50, the opposite. I would get rid of it. I'd use executive orders. I'd probably set a Guinness Book of World Records for the number of executive orders that I would file to take us back to the Constitution. Otherwise, it's going to take 4 years, because you remember we've lost the House and the Senate, right? So we will have to use executive orders to take us back to the Constitution, and I'm willing to do that.
On to question number 3 on the topic of education. This was submitted again by the Republican Women of Greater Richmond. Do you believe our children are being indoctrinated to see America and many of our citizens as fundamentally flawed and racist? And if so, what is your plan to remove toxic curriculum from schools and ensure that patriotism and love for our fellow citizens is cultivated and embraced?
I've actually gone on the record to say that I will have a hotline, an actual call center that actually goes to my office, and we will start defunding liberal colleges, universities, public schools. We will allow the money to follow the child, and we will take away the funding for these schools that continue to teach critical race theory, which we should abolish. I love what Governor DeSantis did in his state, completely banning the Project 1619. I'm a former homeschool mom. We educated all 4 of our kids. We've done private school, homeschool, public school, and I believe the money should follow the child. There should be greater competition, and I believe the parents with their children should determine the type of education that our kids have, and I think that's good for our kids. We should stop trying. I have 4 kids, and we should stop trying to take square pegs and putting them in round holes. It just does not work. And as a mother of 4, 3 boys, that's where my wrinkles came from, was homeschooling 3 boys. Trust me, we need lots of school choice. Thank you.
I have two nieces that are near and dear to my heart. During my retirement, I have been taking care of them, and they are 3 and 5 years old. And when Sarah had to go to school, to preschool, I told her mother that we need to find a school where she'll be safe and secure and that morally supports our values. Racism is in the heart, and the Democrats have been keeping us stuck in race for the past 4 years. So anything that I can do that will not be a part of our curriculum. I will seek the Board of Education and do what we need to do to make sure that our children are getting the best education.
Education is near and dear to my heart. My biggest proponent for education is my wife, who's homeschooled our children for 18 years. And one of the benefits you get out of that is that you can use them for surrogates. So right now I've got my kids out and about. So I'm a firm believer in child labor, and I'm sure some of you have seen them, but it really works very well. Education is something that's really important to everybody because it's about compatibility. We've locked up our children the last year, and we've become less competitive. And how are we going to face up against the CCP, who is really behind a lot of this? The Chinese Communist Party is the master at indoctrination. Indoctrination is what's being done to our schools. What they fail to realize is that critical race theory is based on Marxism, and Marxism did a job in the last century. 20 million dead by Mao, or I'm sorry, 60 million dead by Mao, 20 million dead by Lenin and Stalin, and another 1.5 by Pol Pot. We can't have that. Let's go back to regular education.
Thank you. I believe that we are all created in the image of God, and therefore we are all equal. And anything that tries to divide us is not of Him. Critical race theory in our school is actually a political agenda, not an academic curriculum. And therefore, as governor, I will stand up and say we will not have that in our schools. We'll replace it with something I like very much, which is the 1776 Project. Our schools will be open. We will have a conservative state superintendent of the schools. We will actually replace the entire school board of education. And we will, in fact, teach accelerated math. We will offer advanced diplomas. And we will make sure that Virginia's children can run in the fast lane, not in the broken down lane, which is where the McAuliffe administration wants to keep our children. They want them to, in fact, be left behind, not just by the world, but by the rest of the country. And as governor, I will not stand for that. Our children will know that this governor is going to stand for education and American excellence. Thank you.
Boy, this is a heartfelt subject for me. I spent 30 years doing this, and I was a government teacher who demanded my students know about American exceptionalism. I mean, you think about our founding, and you think about the consent of the governor and those timeless principles. If this country is going to work, we have to have a commonality. And kids will tell you they're not divided. If you go into a classroom right now, kids get it. What critical race theory tries to do is says Americans are a fundamentally bad country. And we basically want you to know that. And it's inculcated everywhere. Teacher training. I mean, you see right now where basically they're, and I was trying to remember this, I wrote this down. Here's one of their suggestions to basically have culturally inclusive and equity practices, this is their training, disrupt unintentional and intentional racism. So here you are as a teacher wanting to really teach with passion about government. So when you get observed, guess what you get observed on? So in the back of your mind, the entire time you're thinking about, okay, this is what I'm judged on. This has got to stop. We need to replace the Board of Education. We need to make sure that we have a curriculum that's solid. And certainly I'm the one I think that knows how to do that, and will do that.
Okay, Kurt, I want to thank you because you laid out what is truly the problem with critical race theory. It's toxic. It's immoral to teach kids this, and it doesn't teach them how to read. But Republicans, this is an important point. One person on this dais here is going to have to debate Terry McAuliffe or whatever kind of Democrat emerges from their primary. And this summer, at that debate, we need a Republican who has a vision that can push back against Terry McAuliffe. Because bad news here, Terry McAuliffe, he's got a vision. Oh, it's a bad vision, but he's being specific in what he wants to do. Terry McAuliffe has said that he's going to put teachers' unions in charge of our educational system. We're going to say no. We are going to break the monopoly that teachers' unions have by funding students instead of systems. That's going to change the game of education. Terry McAuliffe has said he wants to put those charlatans, critical race theory charlatans, in charge of our curriculum. We are going to say, no, Terry. We are going to get critical race theory out of our classroom. We're going to make sure that we have the best educational system in the country because we have a winning vision. Think about the debate this summer and who can go toe-to-toe with Terry.
Our next question is regarding transportation. I've been interviewing candidates in Virginia for nearly a decade now, and when I ask them what's the most important issue to voters, it's always some form of transportation answer. This is a big deal. Joe Biden just crammed through a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure bill, which didn't have a whole lot to do with what we would call infrastructure. It was a kitchen sink spending bill. In fact, I do believe kitchen sinks were included. If you would like a new kitchen sink, call Joe. He'll get you a new one. There's a grant for that. They just passed it. Candidates, how do you define infrastructure? First of all, that's the easy part of the question. And secondly, what do you believe are the most critical infrastructure priorities in Virginia and as governor? How will you solve those problems without imposing higher tolls or taxes? We begin with Mr. Cox.
This is going to be a great issue for Republicans. Terry McAuliffe is extremely vulnerable in that issue. Remember, he is the one that exclusively put those tolls inside the Beltway on 66 with no new capacity. And probably nothing makes people madder than that. And so that is an issue we have to go after him on. So what's infrastructure? Simply roads, bridges, rail, and it is actually roads, bridges, rail. It's not bike trails, it's not ancillary things. We need systems, and we've talked a little bit about smart scale. One thing we did very well in Virginia is, we could do better, is we basically started judging roads on building them, is there actually congestion there? And actually, when you're in Southwest Virginia, it doesn't help with economic development. You need very tough metrics. We audited VDOT probably about 10 years ago and found about $1 billion worth of waste. That has to be done again. I just talked to a road and bridge contractor who has a current contract who told me it's taking him 3 months to get VDOT to even call him back to actually repair roads and bridges. So we see this administration doing nothing in that area. And so this is a very crucial question. We can beat McAuliffe on, we can challenge him directly.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, so we got a problem in Northern Virginia. The problem is that we could build I-66 out 20 lanes in either direction, and we would still have gridlock traffic on most afternoons. The problem is job lock. The problem is that too many people have to live close to their jobs. We're going to change that. But more importantly, Larry, it was on WTOP where Terry McAuliffe said that anyone who argued that tolls would ever go north of $17 for a one-way ride was a liar. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass the Terry McAuliffe rule that says no toll in Virginia can ever be more than $17. And that way, we're going to make Terry tell the truth. But more importantly than that, I'd say Hyperloop is infrastructure. When I talk about Virginia being the best state in the country, I mean it. When I talk about big ideas, we are going to build out Elon Musk's vision for high-speed rail transportation that's going to make a commute from Front Royal to Arlington 7 minutes. We can get from Roanoke to Washington, D.C. in about 45 minutes. That's a game changer for our Commonwealth. Big ideas that Terry can't match.
That's why he goes on TOP instead of MAL, by the way. We'd love Terry to come on, but we wouldn't let him get away with that.
All right.
I'm sorry, I messed everything up. Ms. Chase is next.
It's all good. So listen, friends, I have actually sat on Senate Transportation Committee for 4 years and really had quite the education on our transportation. And specifically, the question is, how do you define infrastructure? So yes, I agree. That's roads, that's bridges, which, by the way, many of our bridges are so collapsed and dilapidated that you can't even drive fire trucks over many of our bridges. And that's a huge concern with me. I think it should be a top issue that we address as Republicans. And I think there needs to be a lockbox on those funds so that it's not rated. You know, we've got the toll money supposedly supposed to go to transportation, but as you know, that it is not. I also mentioned that I support Smart Scale. It was implemented in 2015, and it is definitive metrics. It's not objective. It's very defined metrics. Allows the localities to compete for resources which are limited with VDOT, and I think it's very subjective. It's objective as opposed to subjective.
Are we good? Try again, Ms. Johnson. I'm so sorry. That's a cyber attack from Ralph Northam.
Yes.
Stop at nothing.
Roads and bridges. And on my way up, I saw where they are fixing roads here in Northern Virginia. Looks like y'all having the same problem we're having in Roanoke, Virginia. 81. I mean, there's a wreck every day, it seems like, on 81. So, you know, we have that problem, and we have to find ways and the money to fix our roads to make sure that they're safe and that we can travel. And if his idea works, I looked it up on Googled it the other night when you were speaking about that type of travel. Man, it's fast. And to be put in a tube and go zoop at quite a high speed. And, you know, I think sounds good. Maybe it can work for us, but we do have to come up with something that will work for in Roanoke, Virginia, and here in Northern Virginia, because as I travel, I notice that these are areas that really need transportation taken care of.
Well, friends, I've sat in traffic for a long time in Northern Virginia, but something has changed. What's changed is the fact that we're not going to go back to work the way we were. And what we've learned is that we can spread out and work. And when it comes to defining infrastructure, the one topic that we haven't talked about here is low-cost, rural, broadband internet. High speed. We must absolutely blanket Virginia with the ability for people who live all over this Commonwealth to, in fact, gain access so they too can participate fully. And oh, by the way, the kind of thinking that comes out of Richmond is to dig a trench and use 20-year-old technology. It's time to look up. Elon Musk has solved this for us with low-orbit satellites. And guess what? We're spending millions of dollars digging trenches, and North Carolina is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars lighting up rural North Carolina. This allows people to, in fact, spread out. It allows us to, in fact, have businesses and people live all over the Commonwealth as opposed to all jammed up in Northern Virginia. And friends, we must press forward with rural broadband access for all of Virginia's sake. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to start by the comment that Larry made about infrastructure a la President Biden. What is infrastructure? If we start putting bills that get padded with all sorts of pork and all sorts of unnecessary things that have nothing to do with infrastructure, we're not going to get there from here. So we've got to make sure that those bills are focused on actually building roads, bridges, et cetera. But more importantly, the first thing we got to do is open up the economy. If you don't open up the economy, you're not going to have the money to be able to do anything. And we've been intentionally keeping ourselves closed down and opening up schools. That goes along with the economy. And so what we've got to do is open everything up. I was out of the country for about 10 years, came back around 2002, and what I noticed was all of a sudden I was in Georgia and there were roads everywhere. And what was going on at the same time? The economy was growing. If you grow the economy, you have the money to be able to do that. But you've got to be able to set the regulations and make sure that it's budgeted correctly and it's managed even better. Thank you.
Question number 5. Can you hear me? Oh. Okay. Security, rule of law, And this is a combined question from the various clubs. Last year, Virginia Democrats tried unsuccessfully to slash the Virginia State Police budget and reduce aid to local police departments. What will you do to protect police officers and limited immunity? Will you pledge to vote no on anything that defunds the police?
Well, again, as governor, you don't vote no, you veto. And that's an important distinction. Again, we're running for governor. We're not running for superdelegate, and there's a distinction. You have to put out a vision, and you have to rally all of Virginia around that vision. And when I say we're going to be the best state in the country, when I launched my campaign, I said we are going to #1 in schools, in safety, and in jobs. Right now, Democrats are trying to decriminalize criminality. Democrats are saying, wave that magic wand and let them free. That's the parole board saying we should let criminals go free. So, as your governor, this is very simple. If you break the law, you'll face the law. And that applies to every member of our Commonwealth. We are going to support law enforcement. We are going to make sure we have the best trained, best paid law enforcement in the country who will respect your rights, and you'll know when you interact with a law enforcement officer, they're going to respect you. That's what it means to live in the safest and best state in the country. More importantly, though, law enforcement's going to know they have our support. That's what they need to do their jobs.
I've been having conversations with law enforcement officials all throughout the Commonwealth. And one of the things that they keep telling me is that I'm ready to retire. They're ready to hang it up. Look at the number of police officers that have left the force. Look across the board. And what's happening is that we have a governor who is favoring criminals and putting more restrictions on the police. That is a good, that's the way that socialists operate, because they want to make sure that they keep you in check, and we cannot allow that. I've been all over the world. I've trained police forces throughout the world, and one of the things that we've always done wonderfully throughout the world is we've emphasized the rule of law. As military officers, when we're training nationalized police, which we do by law, we always focus on making sure that rule of law is there. And you've got to professionalize, you've got to train, and you've got to make sure that people are taking care of their own citizens. But this is part of a ploy that this governor has used to intimidate people by giving more rights to criminals and a lot more restrictions to law enforcement officers. We got to stop that. Thank you.
There will be no defunding the police. They put their life on the line every day that they put on their uniform and walk out that house. So what we need to do for them is give them the right training that they need. They now receive online training, a lot of online training. So they need to go back to in-person training, because when you're in person, they get to talk and collaborate together, know what's going on in the different communities. But online, you just keep getting the same thing over and over. So we will not be defunding the police. We will do everything that we can to support them, and thank you.
And before the next candidate speaks, I just want to make an announcement that, again, there's no live streaming, so it's not fair if one candidate live streams and others are not in respecting the rules. So just please abide by the rules, please.
My very first proposal running for governor was a partnership for a safe Virginia. We're going to have to pay both our state police and our deputy sheriffs, and my commitment is $50 million, both for starting salaries. And let me tell you where you're losing a lot of people. Your first sergeants in the state police, a lot of your veteran sheriff's deputies that have been there. It's called compression. We're going to have to deal with issues like that, which are very, very important. I was very proud to be the state police legislator of the year, and you don't get that for just voting. And there's so many other issues, whether it be qualified immunity, which will allow you to sue a police officer basically for almost any trivial thing. And think about losing your home, et cetera, and you're starting off at $33,000 a year, so that's a big issue. SROs, our student resource officers, who are so key. That's where kids get to know, basically, in a good way, police officers and sheriff's deputies. The Democrats want to do away with that. It's this whole mentality that law enforcement is bad. and there's never a focus on victims. And so this will be one of my very, very top issues, and I'll conclude with this. We've got to work on the mental health issues for them. They're off the streets constantly, having to deal with mental health issues, people that are psychotic, et cetera. We're going to have to deal with those mental health issues to help them out.
Well, I'm going to go back to my experience in the state Senate, and I've actually been honored to carry the Fraternal Order of Police legislation for 6 years in the Senate, and actually had at least 4 of those bills to pass. You had mentioned one of the things, first of all, I will fully fund our law enforcement. You know, they're talking about defunding the police. I would argue that we have never fully funded our law enforcement. In fact, Department of Corrections, they don't even have benefits. So that's something that we need to work on. We were also talking about, it's actually qualified immunity instead of limited immunity. I've been advocating for that on the floor of the Senate. If you've watched some of the floor speeches, I definitively speak up and defend our law enforcement. I'm actually a member of the Fraternal Order of Police in Chesterfield County, proud member of that. But I would also fire the current parole board, because as you know, the parole board that Terry McAuliffe hired is releasing known murderers into our streets. At the same time, they're taking away our first line of defense, our Second Amendment, and they are also taking away our second line of defense, which is our law enforcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is another one of those moments where elections have consequences. Do we want to defund our police, or do we want to invest in our police and have the country's best law enforcement capabilities? Well, I will tell you, as your governor, I will lead the latter. I've spoken with sheriffs and police chiefs all over this Commonwealth. And in fact, over the last few days, many, many, many of them have stepped in to endorse me. Because what I'm talking about is funding the police, increasing salaries, dealing with compression, providing real access to retirement health care benefits, which right now, deputies and sheriffs and policemen all across this great Commonwealth nearly go bankrupt trying to get. And folks, if we do not understand the gravity of qualified immunity and the loss of that for our law enforcement heroes, we should just ask them. And what I hear over and over and over again is every single experienced law enforcement hero in this Commonwealth will try to retire. Friends, we must stand up and win this election. Otherwise, we will not have law enforcement. It is that critical for us right now. So please join me as we take back our Commonwealth and defend law enforcement. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take just a little pause here to recognize our sponsors and also give the candidates a little chance to refresh their water glasses. All right, I'd like to give some honor and respect to our honored guest here. We have NFRW President Ann Shockett. We have NFRW Policy Director Terry Hauser, our VFRW President Paula Steiner, and I'm first VP, but anyway. If there's any VFRW presidents or past presidents or people who've been district members, would you please stand? I'd like to recognize you. Any VFRW presidents or past presidents? I know you're out there. So, thank you, ladies. We have the RPV Chair, Rich Anderson, National Committee Woman, Patty Lyman, our 11th District Chair, Melissa Bodwin, who just stepped someplace. There she is in the back corner. She just stepped over there. And if there's any member who's ever been, is currently serving or is past person who has served on the State Central Committee, if you also would please stand, we'd like to recognize you. Okay, and we have some candidate representatives here. We have a representative from Jack White's campaign. We have a candidate, a representative from Jason Miara's campaign. And is there any other candidates here that are running? Okay. And I also want to give a special thank you to Suzanne Spikes. She provided all the printing for all the bulletins, and I want to give her a special round of applause. So. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Martha Bonetta, who's going to go through and thank our sponsors, and then we'll get back to the debate.
Hello, VFRW. Can we just give a big round of applause for Paula and for Larry for the great job they're doing as moderators? So this is the time when we're going to give a special thanks to all of our sponsors that made this evening possible. So we're going to start with our gold sponsors, Pete Snyder for governor. Our silver sponsors, Glenn Youngkin for governor and Beverly Cavatayo. Our bronze sponsors, Kirk Cox for governor and Stacy Goed. Our individual sponsors, Paula Steiner, David and Nancy Almasi, Phil Bell, Walter and Bonnie Burkhart, and Jean Gannon. We also have several online sponsors, Ginny Carlson, John Self, Charlotte Baker, Middle Resolution PAC, Glenn Youngkin for governor, Mary Franklin, Bull Run RW, Hampton Roads RW, Harrisonburg Rockingham RW, and Liberty RW and Monticello Council of Republican Women, RW's Republican Women. Thank you all so much. It's because of your generosity and your contributions to the VFRW that we're able to have this wonderful evening for you, and we hope you'll also continue to contribute and donate online at the VFRW website. This is a wonderful evening. Thank you all so much. We're going to continue at this time.
All right. Thank you, Martha. I think that mic comes back here. Sorry. Everybody's water filled? Anybody spill? We weren't watching, don't worry, it's all right. Our next question comes from the Republican women of Harrisonburg. This is about voter outreach, expanding the Republicans' message to all Virginians, and at the same time maintaining our party's historical position on legal and illegal immigration. Republicans do not fall into the trap, the insidious trap of racial identity when it comes to our politics. Freedom has no race in America. Liberty has no ethnicity in America. We believe, as a great American Republican believed, that it is the content of our character, not the color of our skin, that matters most. So given that, as governor and as the Republican candidate for governor, how will you build on the phenomenal support that President Trump was able to build last year amongst the Latino community in particular, and yet still oppose illegal immigration? Mr. De La Pena, I suspect you might have thoughts on this issue.
Well, thank you very much. So in 2016, I was part of President Trump's outreach to Hispanics, and we were able to get 29% of the Hispanic vote. What that means is that we've got to reach out to these communities, as I pointed out earlier. We keep putting forward the same type of candidate, and we keep losing because we're not expanding the voter base. The only one that's going to get there is going to be me, because I am in that community. I know how to reach out to that community. And as far as illegal immigration goes, this is one of the sad realities is what's occurring right now. We have now become a link in that human trafficking chain because we've become the coyotes of choice. My wife doesn't like coyotes. So what we're seeing now is the human smugglers are making more money because they're already allowing the U.S. government to be able to place people all over the United States. So this is the problem that we create when we go without rule of law. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So first of all, on illegal immigration, this is a problem caused in Washington by the Biden administration. President Trump absolutely had it under control. We had a secure border, we had great policies, and Joe Biden, for spite, undid it all, and now we're dealing with it. We're going to have to enforce our immigration laws. When it comes to actually expanding the tent, this is what we must do as Republicans. The reality is, however, we're going to have a convention on May the 8th, and the election's going to actually start the third week of September. And so where do we go? Well, we've already started. When we started this campaign, we actually initiated coalitions into the minority community right away. We have Black Virginians for Glenn, up and running. I'm the only candidate probably on either side of this race who's been to Jackson Ward and met with black leaders. We actually been working into the Asian community, the Korean community, the Taiwanese community, the Filipino community. We've been working into the Hispanic community, the Puerto Rican community, the Cuban community. Folks, this is how you actually win. You must start now You can't wait until September. We're running a differentiated kind of campaign to win, not to actually just talk about it. Thank you.
All right, so my background as a former policy CEO focused on Europe. And I have seen the future if we don't make a change. Because in Europe, they lost control of their border, and as a result, they weren't able to even have an immigration policy in the first place. What Joe Biden has done is lost control of our border, and I think we can look around and see we don't have an immigration policy right now. That's at the federal level. But let's talk about Virginia. Because if you left El Salvador and you emigrated legally to Virginia, why did you leave? You left because they not only defunded the police in El Salvador, the entire police force collapsed. And the Salvatruches took over, the gangs took over. And now you're in Virginia, and you hear Democrats saying, we're going to defund the police now in your neighborhood. Do you know who takes over your community without the police? So we're going to stand firm and say, we're going to fund the police, we're going to allow police officers to do their job, and I hope we talk about the economy because we can all agree on one thing. We like money. Doesn't matter where you're from, and if we're going to agree on that, we're going to phase out the state income tax. But remember this, the message must be, we're going to support you and your community against the criminals in your community.
When I first ran for sheriff of Roanoke City, they said, Octavia, we got you. We need you go here. They said, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. So I didn't go. So guess what happened? Octavia didn't win. So the next time I ran, I went into every neighborhood there was to go into. I went into Northeast, Southeast, Northwest. I went all over the city, and I won. And at one time, Southeast was hard for Republicans to win. But I finally won that poll there. I won those precincts in Southeast, and I was so proud of that because I went into that neighborhood and I spent time in that neighborhood, I would go there into that neighborhood and eat in the restaurants there. I would hold meet and greets there in the restaurants, and the people were so glad to see us when we would come. So that's what we have to do. We have to go into the neighborhood and enforce our laws, immigration laws.
I think what Donald Trump did so well is he sort of redefined the Republican Party as the party of the working class. And I think that's what really has been effective. And boy, there's no one more working class than Kirk Cox. So I taught inner city schools, my very first teaching assignment, 90% minority. So I just didn't visit an inner city housing project. I actually taught there. And you'll really find out with those parents, they love their kids. They want for them exactly what we want. If you talk about education policy, smart school choice, opening schools, things of that nature, they'll respond to that. I really want to tell you all this. I mean, my district's 30% minority. I went into those areas. I knocked 8,000 doors. If you'll meet people where they're at, in their faith, et cetera, they're amazing. The Hispanic community is very pro-life, if you think about it. If you go up to Northern Virginia, you look at TJ right now. The Indian and the Asian community is furious over the dumbing down of our governor's schools, et cetera. There's so many good issues we have, but we got to be willing to go out there and do outreach and get out of our comfort zone. That's how we win.
Well, as many of you all know, I have helped on many, many campaigns for the past decade, and building these coalitions is one of the things that I did best. No matter what the community, we went there. What I would also tell you is I was the vice chairman of the Commission on Economic Opportunity for Virginians and Aspiring and Diverse Communities. I was a member of that commission in the Senate, and it is all about being inclusive of minority communities and helping them with economic development. What I would also share with you is a story of a good friend of mine, Rosalinda and Carlos Rivera, who live in Chesterfield County. They are from the Latino community. They're also very close friends of mine. I actually graduated from high school with Rosalinda. They have an incredible, thriving ministry to those who are coming off of addiction, sex trafficking, and they take those folks into their care, rehabilitate them, and give them a actual trade and teach them that trade. That's how we build those bridges. I think it's done through faith.
Next question impacts rural Virginia, and it's from the 5th District Clubs. Rural Americans, particularly in Virginia, face tremendous disparities in broadband connectivity. What is your plan to expand broadband to homes, schools, students, and businesses across Virginia?
I am a Southwest Virginia native. So when they were out of school this past year, people in Southwest Virginia, they weren't able to get on the internet. They had to go to businesses to be able to get their lessons done. So Southwest Virginia, we need to work on the infrastructure for them to be able to get the broadband, the internet, for the people, for the schools, and for the communities. But most importantly, we have to make sure that it will be affordable for the people in those areas. Thank you.
Broadband is critical for growth. There's new technologies being developed all the time. I've been all over rural Virginia now. I've covered the entire Commonwealth, and one of the things that I can relate to is people that work. I was a cotton picker at 10. I had 20 different jobs before I went into college, and I know what it is to work, and I know what fellow Virginians are going through in some of these areas where they don't have the same level of access. You know, you learn how to work, but with work, you've got to learn how to study. And study is something that you're going to need to do in some of these far-off places, especially now with our self-imposed shutdowns that the governor has imposed upon us. And we need that broadband. We've got to have it because that's one way that you can reach out and get the education that you need. And we've got to be more creative about the way we use that education. But I would also argue that there's plenty of new technologies that are coming out that can expand broadband. It's becoming less expensive all the time because there's many different alternatives. So we need to explore all of those and make sure that when you spend that money, that it's actually put toward broadband. Thank you.
Well, I believe that the access to internet should be considered a basic utility. And as we've traveled across Virginia, one of the things that's been very clear to me is trying to call someone or do some work, and you find those hot spots where you can't even receive a phone call. I understand that frustration. You know, one of the things that we have done in the General Assembly is pass legislation to spend more money in what I consider a critical area. I think it's the number one issue that we can do as a governor to put money in the budget to ensure that we prioritize broadband, making sure people have the right upload and download speed, using new technologies that come along. But there's been plenty of legislation that has been introduced in the Senate that we have rejected that would allow us to attach various types of infrastructure, wireless infrastructure, and have one contract for the state as opposed to over 140-something different contracts by locality. So there are some things that we can do now to increase our access.
I think all of us will tell you that when we travel the state, broadband's the biggest issue. And I think some of the innovative technologies are very, very crucial, but we got to solve the last mile problem first. And so probably several years ago, we started a fund called the VATI Fund. And that fund basically does the middle and last mile. We probably started capitalizing that fund at about $5 million. And one of the big successes is that's about $80 million right now. So I think you're going to see tremendous progress, which is very, very important. There's other things that you need to do. Education, we've got to start matching our career and tech programs where the jobs are. We're doing a very, very poor job of that. You've got right now a lot of, whether it be construction, whether it be electricians, plumbers, and we're not having the community colleges basically work on those types of things. So I think educational alignment is also very, very key. And credentialing is going to be something also very big, stackable credentials. And finally, I would say this. I think the key for probably Southwest Virginia is also school construction. That's a tough issue right now. But they have schools right now that don't have air conditioning. They don't have various other things. We're going to have to tackle that problem so they can have what they're going to need in education. Else you're going to have really big problems for them.
Okay, so tonight we've agreed on a lot of things, but this is an issue in which I think the candidates disagree, at least to the large extent. You see, I don't believe the future is in the dirt. The future is in the sky. And I don't believe the government should be taking your tax money to build out holes in the dirt to use last-gen technology. Tonight, when you go home, look up. You might see a light streaking across the sky. That's not a star, that's not a plane, that is a low Earth satellite, low Earth orbit satellite that was not built by the government. It was built by Elon Musk and private industry, and that satellite is right now connecting kids in Southwest Virginia to their schools with high-speed satellite internet. But now we have the governor's role, because right now Virginia only has a license for Southwest Virginia. It's kind of a test project. And as your governor, I'm going to burn a fire under the federal government and say we want the license for the entire Commonwealth, because that's the governor's job. Not to think about last-gen ideas and use your money, but empower private industry to advance Southwest Virginia, not into the 21st century, but the 22nd.
Thank you. Yes, I actually mentioned this earlier, and this is the most important problem in infrastructure in Virginia today, is access to affordable, high-speed internet. And yes, Peter and I agree. This is actually a look-up moment. But let me tell you what it facilitates, and this is the big challenge we have. Because if we don't get this done quickly, if we wait to go dig trenches and spend tens of millions of dollars, what happens is what happened this past week, that companies like Apple choose to go to Raleigh, North Carolina, and not come to Virginia. Companies like Samsung Electronics choose to build their U.S. manufacturing facility in Arizona, Texas, or New York, not in Virginia. Businesses actually pick up and move. Schools aren't open the way they should be because children can't fully participate in internet learning, in the classroom, not at home. And oh, by the way, training suffers extraordinarily. Because guess what? The best training classes oftentimes are offered at Northern Virginia Community College for tech degrees. And somebody in Roanoke actually wants to do this online. Friends, we have to get moving, not working at government pace, but working at real people pace, and bring to Virginians the ability to compete and participate in this economy that we're going to light up and get moving when I go work for you as your governor. Thank you.
Our next question comes from the Colonial Mount Vernon Republican Women, and it has to do with Virginia's election process. The Commonwealth is currently an open primary state. It means the Virginia voter is not asked to identify with any party, and that means that we have non-Republicans ostensibly meddling with and messing around with our process to choose our candidates if we have a primary. A lot of Republicans would like to see Virginia move to a closed primary situation where, it's a shocking idea, only Republicans pick Republican candidates and only Democrats pick Democrat candidates. If you agree with this proposal, please tell us how you would implement this as governor. If you don't agree with us, please tell us why.
Well, I was born in Arizona, Barry Goldwater country, and one of the first things I did was register, when I turned 18, register to vote, and I can't tell you how proud I was to fill out that I was a Republican. And I actually got a card, and it said Peter Duran, Republican Party, and it was one of the greatest things I ever got at 18 years old. Now, when I moved to Virginia, after I graduated from Georgetown in 2006 and made the Commonwealth my lifelong home, it was kind of weird for me to actually go to a primary and go, wait a minute, so what's going on here? Because Democrats and Republicans were floating all over the place. No one knows who's who, and I'll tell you, campaigning, it's kind of hard because you don't always know who is who to talk to, and who's not going to vote in your primary. I'll say the same thing about this that I said about our primary for governor. I will support whatever the party says. I see some benefits, I see some costs, but the governor can't just walk into the House of Delegates and slam down a bill and say, you pass this now, because that won't work. The governor does set a vision and say, this is what we're going to work for, and that's what I'll do.
I went to a committee meeting in Galax, Virginia, and I was looking for some delegates, so I went to visit some friends. And I stopped and asked him if they'd be a delegate, and he says, well, Octavia, I am a registered Democrat. And I said, what? He said, yes, I'm a registered Democrat. And I said, okay, you're a registered Democrat. He was letting me know that he wasn't going to be voting for me or be a delegate for me. So I think most people, when they go to the primaries, that they are going to vote for who they want and will vote for in that November. I know some people that they consider themselves independents. They are voting a primary for somebody, but they're also going to vote for that person in November because that is who they want to be as their candidate, and thank you.
The difference between a primary and a convention, is that fun or what? I have had more questions thrown at me about that passionately on both sides than you can ever begin to imagine. And they always ask me, what do you want to do? And my answer is, what do you want to do? Because it's really up to all of you to make that determination. And you can make that determination through the RPV and the State Central Committee. That's why they exist. If you're not happy with the results of what they're coming up with, then you need to talk to your State Central Committee members and tell them, I don't like what you're doing. Or you talk to the RPV and you tell them, this isn't the way we're going to pick our candidates. But they represent you, and you have to make that determination. It's really not up to us because we are your servants. We are here to serve you. You need to make sure that whoever you have in the party is representing you. And I would propose that that's the way to go. Thank you.
So I think the question here is not primary versus convention. The question is, are we going to have closed primaries or open primaries? And I would argue that if we are going to have the best nominee with the most buy-in, that it behooves us to choose an open primary that allows independent swing voters to vote for our candidates. And in this year's election, had we had a primary, it would have been on the same day as the Democrats' primary. So you go on January 8th, and the Democrats get one ballot, the Republicans get the other ballot. And so there's no cross-pollination unless you choose to forego voting in your election. But in the General Assembly, once again, this is an issue that has come before us. Do we want to have a closed primary where people have to register as registered Republicans and only have Republican voters? It goes both ways. I think that we should actually include the independents in there, and I just think it helps us get the best candidate possible.
Well, the facts speak for themselves from Republicans. So I just want to remind everybody that when there was an idea that we were going to have an assembled convention in Lynchburg, there was an idea that we might have 5,000 people participate. And now that we're actually having an unassembled convention, we have 50,000 people participating. And I would add that as I've traveled around over the last 2 weeks, I've had dozens and dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds of good Republicans who said to me, I wish I could participate, I missed the deadline, or I'm going to be out of town, or guess what, I'm in the military and I'm not going to be here. Friends, we must have this party win through addition and multiplication, not through subtraction and division. And so we must open our party up. Yes, if people want to register as Republicans, great. But shouldn't we have 300,000 people participating in this next choice, not 50,000? That's the way we're going to win. And this is why I am a differentiated kind of candidate who thinks different than we've thought historically. And I plan on winning this November, not losing. Thank you very much.
Well, I think the question is more a broad question. Are you for a closed or open primary state? I'm actually for a closed primary state. This bill's been up for numerous years in the General Assembly. If you go knock on people's doors, they think they're registered Republicans and Democrats. A lot of them think they're in a closed primary state. We're not. We're in an open primary state. The advantage of a closed primary state is you have Republicans picking your nominee and Democrats picking your nominee. I just think that's the way to go. But it's also a more open process because, to the point, you're going to have literally thousands and thousands more people participating, but you're going to have people in your party participating. This bill actually was around forever. It almost passed. It actually failed, as I recall, almost by 1 or 2 votes way back 10 or 15 years ago when we should have passed it. But I think it's actually a solution to a lot of our problems. I'd very much like to see that happen. I think that'd take away a lot of the problems we had this year. So a closed primary state would solve that problem of crossover voting, but you'd have much broader representation. So I think it's a very good idea. I would support it.
Next question is on COVID-19. This is from the 6th District Clubs in Southwest Virginia. Where do you stand on vaccine mandates? What would you have done differently in rolling out vaccines and COVID-19 prevention?
Well, I'm not for vaccine mandates. My guesses will be pretty unanimous on that. I mean, obviously, I, as governor, would encourage vaccines, but certainly think that would not be the way to go. I think the way the vaccines have been handled has been disastrous. We've been in the bottom 5 in testing. If you look back in the spring, when the vaccine rollout came, we were probably in the very bottom in the first few weeks. Remember how we did it? We basically did it through the health departments. Almost no one could give the vaccine. And we had a bill that was basically up. The Republicans really pushed to broaden who could actually distribute the vaccine, have a lot more health care providers actually give that vaccine. And here's what's interesting about the Democrats. They fought that bill tooth and nail. And then the public started to get on them about how bad things were. And suddenly, the Democrats put the bill in on the House side, and it passed. And that's when you saw vaccines obviously do much better. So I would totally be different than this, and I think also vaccine passports or something that I would have an executive order. We would not have a government agency do that or a business basically do that.
So on this issue, I can actually talk about what I've done in the Senate is indicative of what I will do as a governor of Virginia. Number one, I will ban any type of vaccine passport. I've also introduced legislation in the state Senate to prevent discrimination should you choose not to get the vaccine. Also, entry into state buildings. That was my bill as well. I think it's very important that we respect. I always say my body, my choice. You know, the liberals like to use that against us. And yes, I am 100% pro-life. But I would also tell you that I was actually the co-patron of the bill to allow additional community helpers to administer the vaccine, because we were finishing number 50 as far, you can't get much worse than 50, under Governor Ralph Northam, once again emphasizing that we need a new governor. I would also tell you that outside of vaccinations in general, that I'm a candidate that supports medical freedom. It should be parental rights, whether we're talking about the COVID vaccine or any other vaccine. I do support parents' right to choose.
So first of all, I don't understand why our governor seems surprised when the vaccine showed up. What it tells me is we keep sending the same kinds of people into these jobs, people that have never had to deliver results. My 30-year business career has trained me differently. So what we would do was we would plan ahead and be ready. We'd have the National Guard ready to distribute through logistics systems that work. We would absolutely pull in every possible injection point you could begin to think of. Every pharmacy, every single hospital network, every single medical personnel. And then finally, folks, I just want to remind us all, in March, we were absolutely ranked dead last in Liberty in Virginia. And let's just talk about, rather than the failed vaccine rollout, the failed pandemic management. Our state should be open right now. Businesses should be open, schools should be open, houses of worship should be open. And what this governor is doing to us is absolutely wrong. And when I'm your governor, I will get us open.
I think this is the one question that absolutely unites all of Virginia, because we have all been shocked by how Ralph Northam has handled COVID. It's been a disaster. The decline in our economy was a man-made disaster. It wasn't COVID, it was a man-made disaster, and we know that because Florida and Texas showed us. You do not have to close your state. More importantly, absolutely not. No vaccine passports, stop. No vaccine mandates, stop. But I'll tell you why. Because your medical privacy matters. When you walk into a restaurant or a bar, what are they asking you ultimately? Show me your papers. Show me your passport. You have to tell them what your medical history is. And my question to Democrats is, what is your limiting factor? Because we don't trust you when you tell us it's only about COVID. It's only about your COVID vaccine. We don't trust you, and we know not to trust you. So as your governor, when you see something on television and you see the left on the rampage and they're going to say, oh no, you have to do this, I want you to know I don't have to worry, because Peter's going to defend my medical privacy. Peter's going to defend my rights.
You know, the Commonwealth has the largest brain trust in the country. We have the smartest people in the Commonwealth. What we learned from President Donald Trump is that if you put people to work in the right jobs with the right skill sets, you're going to get the desired results. We got 3 different vaccines that he began from ground zero. That said, we didn't distribute them very well under this current administration. President Donald Trump figured out how you can use the military and put the former commander of the Army Materiel Command in charge, and he got it done. I've talked to people that know how to distribute vaccines, and they can tell me how to get it done efficiently so that everybody who wants a vaccine can get one. But I am a firm believer in medical freedom, because we do not need to be mandating that vaccine to anybody. If you want to take it, take it. And you need to make it available to everybody. The other ridiculous thing that we're doing is, why are we wearing a mask outside? Has anybody ever asked that question? I mean, this is ridiculous. We need to stop that. Thank you.
I believe that the vaccine is a personal choice, and I believe that we should not have mandated passport. If I want to travel, I should be able to travel without showing any passport or showing that I've had a vaccine. And the rollout, they should have had a plan in place across the whole state of Virginia. Not just part of Virginia, but the whole state of Virginia. They should have had a plan as to when the vaccinations would have been there and gave that the people that wanted to vaccine, that they could go. And I think at first you had to have a certain age, but they still could have had a plan across the whole state of Virginia and no vaccine passport.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want you to know we are more than halfway through our questioning now. For those of you who are fidgeting a little bit, after this next question, we are going to take a short break so you can use the restroom and stretch your legs a little bit, and the candidates can arm wrestle if they choose. This next question is from the James River Republican Women, and there's a lot involved here. It might be hard to address all of it in just 1 minute, but do your best. Many parts of the city of Richmond are right now a mess because of the unrest over this past year. How will you work with the city of Richmond, since it's the capital city and you want to be governor, to make it a tourist destination once again? How will you combat BLM and Antifa in Richmond, because it will be ground zero of future unrest? But beyond Richmond, other cities in Virginia that have seen these kind of protests and riots. And what actions will you take to stop riots, looting, and burning of our Virginia cities and prevent it from even happening in the first place?
Great. Thank you. Thank you. This all starts with leadership. And what we saw from our governor is none. So we actually have looting and violence, and he said nothing other than please stand down. So the first thing we're going to do is actually have a parenting moment in Virginia. As my wife would say, Virginians need to understand what's right and what's wrong. And looting in our streets is wrong. Peaceful protesting is guaranteed under our Constitution. And so we will just not allow it. If you break the law, you're absolutely going to be prosecuted. Second of all, we absolutely have to engage in communities so that we can, in fact, turn on our economic engine. Let's go back to our Republican creed. The free enterprise system is the key, and we have to turn it on. It is off right now. And when I meet with folks in Jackson Ward, what I hear from them is they're not looking for a handout. They're looking for reduced regulation so business is easier. Looking for a governor that, in fact, removes all the inhibition to getting business moving. And that's what we must do in Richmond, is get it moving again like the rest of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
If you've not had a chance to walk through Richmond, it will absolutely break your heart. The state capitol, where I've had the privilege of being for 32 years, the oldest legislative body in the New World, has been literally boarded up. You actually have businesses that will tell you they fake boarding up, hoping the protesters will not get them. And so this is all Ralph Northam, LeVar Stoney, et cetera, and it's nothing more than just not supporting the police. If you talk to the Chesterfield Police Department, they'll tell you they went over there to help. And basically they were told to stand down, and the chief basically said, we're not going back over there. So it's nothing more, and I do agree, Glenn, it's nothing more than a leadership question. When you're governor, you have got to use that bully pulpit. You have got to lead, and that has simply not happened. And in those neighborhoods, let me tell you, you'll never have economic development. You'll never have anything there as long as you have what's going on in Richmond right now. It affects their very livelihood. And so that better be a governor's top priority, to make sure that the police and law enforcement know that you have their back and you're not going to stand for those types of riots and protests that you've had in Richmond.
I would let them know that there is a new sheriff in town and that we will not be standing for any of this looting and burning of our streets, and that you just need to get up and get out. And then I would go to speak with their mayors, their city councils, and let them know, you know, we cannot reward this negative behavior. We need to start enforcing our laws and doing what is right. Because if you let the people know from the beginning that you're not going to tolerate it, then they're not, and let them know that you're not going to tolerate it and put action with it, guess what? They will leave your city. They will leave. So that's what we have to do. Let them know that there is a new sheriff in town and we're not going to tolerate you burning our streets. And we're going to take down all the wires and stuff around our state buildings and stuff. Because I was down at the Capitol and I saw it. I said, this is awful. And I couldn't even go up the street. I had to turn around and go around some other way. And you know, when you have directions and it doesn't work well.
You know, Richmond is a beautiful city, or was a beautiful city. Look at how it's been left. This is what happens when you allow lawbreakers to break the law. It's pretty simple. So as governor, you just arrest everybody that is breaking the law. You break the law, you deal with the consequences of breaking the law. And if we look across the country at what is a result of the protests in the neighborhoods where people have been allowed to run amok, you destroy communities, you destroy small businesses, you destroy livelihoods, you destroy everything. And it's pretty simple. We are a country of rule of law. We have to abide by that rule of law. And by the way, the reason that it was done is because you want to destroy American history. Richmond is rich with history. You destroy a statue, you pay the price. Look at what President Donald Trump did. As soon as he started putting in federal fines for anybody who destroyed private property or statues, they stopped doing it. So let's do the same thing.
Okay.
So under the current leadership, what we have seen is a complete abdication of responsibilities. That's what we've seen. The Democrats have forsaken their role of protecting the public. They've had more compassion for criminals than they have law-abiding citizens. And we see that not only in the legislation that they introduced and passed, but we also see it in their leadership. You know, I had I don't know what you would call it, a bad experience of going into the streets of Richmond. There was no law enforcement. They were told to stand down. And my security team and I were supposed to do a Second Amendment rally in Richmond. We were told it wasn't safe, but we went anyway because we weren't going to be intimidated by a bunch of domestic punks. So I had on my AR-15, and many of y'all have seen that in Style Weekly. It was on the front page. I have an AR-15 and my elephant miniskirt, by the way, representing Republican women. And I had an AR-15 strapped on along with my other security members on my team because we weren't going to be intimidated by domestic punks. We're going to follow the law. I will be a law and order governor, and we will stop this domestic terrorism.
So I want every one of you, in your mind's eye, to come back with me to yesterday afternoon on Franklin Street in Richmond, about 2 blocks from our capital. On Franklin Street, there's a boarded up restaurant. It's an old Subway. That was a black-owned business. It was boarded up. It was attacked, trashed once, twice, and now they're closed forever. And scrawled all over that black-owned business is all cops are bad and expletives about the police. And then walk with me. Turn the corner right. Walk with me down the streets of Richmond, and you will feel like the last man or last woman on earth. That city is a ghost town. But why did this happen? I heard a lot from our Republican colleagues tonight. But it happened because Ralph Northam is not in charge of our Commonwealth. The New York Times editorial board is in charge of our Commonwealth, and Ralph Northam would never do anything that would upset those who really pull the strings. We need a governor who understands it is their job to upset the New York Times, probably on a daily basis. It is their job to allow the police to do their jobs. It's their job to protect the ladies of the James River community. It is their job to protect our great capital and your communities.
All right, candidates, as I said, we're a little more than halfway through our questions. We are going to take a little break to just stretch our legs and use the restroom if you need. But don't go far. It's only going to be 5 minutes. We are going to be entertained by the Washington Redskins marching band. Oh, I'm so sorry. There are no Washington Redskins. I apologize. I forgot about that. Would have been nice, though. Go ahead and take a break. 5 minutes. I'm well.
All right. We are going to get started. There's only going to be 2 more questions. We know everyone's faded and we want to have a good time. And then we're going to have closing comments. So we are going to let this debate continue. Please be quiet. Stop your live streaming. We have the service available. And we will have a good time in a half hour, okay?
All right, here we go. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I will pose for pictures afterwards, I promise. I don't know why you'd want a picture of me. Thank you, candidates. Welcome back. How'd it go? Everything good? Excellent. When Virginia was wooing Amazon, it became a degrading process. And I know that you're all going to say that small business is the backbone of the Virginia economy. I know that because you always say it. And also it's true. But Virginia bent over backwards to give everything in the world to Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Amazon is king right now in Northern Virginia if you didn't know any better. How will we expect small businesses to survive when government regulations make it difficult for them but are thrown out the window for literally the richest man in the world? How do you plan to protect key real estate in Northern Virginia from being swallowed up by one company as well? And this question, we're jumping around here, I apologize. Mr. Duran, this question is to you first.
All right, Larry.
I'm sorry, this is line 13 on your
That's okay,
order
thanks.
of questions.
I'll answer it either way. Larry, I've been waiting for you to ask me this all night long. if we are going to change how we structure our economy in Virginia, if we are going to change your life, if we are going to show a clear and compelling contrasts to the vision that the Democrats are offering, I think we as Republicans have an answer. Because I live 3 blocks from the new Amazon HQ. I think that all jobs are important, absolutely, but the Democrats' priorities have been all wrong. Democrats have said, all right, we're going to focus on Northern Virginia and maybe some parts of Virginia Beach and ignore the rest of our Commonwealth. And what has happened? What has happened is that our Commonwealth has shriveled and the economy has gone south. We're going to change that by phasing out the state income tax in Virginia and going to 0%. This will be a game changer for every business, every self-employed person, every retiree. We are going to unlock the throttle of our economy so we don't have to rely on just Nova and Virginia Beach. This is what I mean when I say I've got a winning vision and we're going to live in the best state in the country because we are going to 0% on the income tax. That's a game changer, Larry.
I believe that all of Virginia should thrive. So for it to thrive, we're going to have to put the big businesses and the small businesses on 2 different levels. Because a small business, there's no way that they can compete with a large business. They can't compete with Amazon. So we need to put them on different levels to help the small entrepreneurs so they can get started, providing what they need. And then let the companies know that Virginia is a great state and we are a big state, that let's offer them other places in this great state, instead of Northern Virginia and Virginia Beach. I mean, there's Southwest Virginia. There's farmland everywhere that somebody can come and put a business. And you will have better workers because they worked in factories. And if you worked in a factory, guess what? You worked. So those people have the know-how to work. Thank you.
Another great issue to get Terry McAuliffe on. If you ask Terry McAuliffe, he will tell you his biggest success, because he did say we blocked all the rest of his stuff. His biggest success was, I call big whale hunting. It was landing the big corporation. He used to brag about his Rolodex. And if you ask Southwest and Southside, et cetera, under Terry McAuliffe, they would tell you that he wasn't interested. He wasn't interested in small business. VEDP, which is your leading agency does that, was not interested at all. And so once again, you should have a totally different focus as far as that goes. I think big whale hunting is very bad. If you talk to small business right now, regulations are a big deal. When I was speaker, we cut regulations by 20% at DPOR, which probably regulates more business than anything else in criminal justice services. I would recommend we do that with all agencies. And they're small things. If you talk to a lot of the businesses, there are probably 50 positions buried in the budget right now from the Department of Labor and DEQ that are gotcha as far as businesses go. And the last thing I would do is get rid of the new Secretary of Labor, which will be nothing more than a millstone around the neck of every small business.
How many of you remember the song, I Owe My Soul to the Company Store? A little dated, maybe. I was a little kid when that song came out. But Amazon has become the company store. And it's getting too big. And it's getting too big, and it's also encroaching on way too many things. Remember the censorship of the President of the United States? Remember who owns the servers? So you've got a company now that owns servers, it owns distribution. You can get anything from Amazon. And they have a free reign at doing all kinds of stuff. They can also donate money to all sorts of organizations that are antithetical to the Republican Party. It's time that we start putting limits on their ability to be able to do that. So I'm all for having a broad distribution system put in place. My wife always says that wealth is the product of human creativity in a free environment. We're destroying that free environment. And what we need to do is make sure that those companies don't become so powerful that they weed everybody else out. So we need to open up the economy, and that's a good way to get things back up and running. Thank you.
So I remember when this was an issue before the General Assembly, and I actually spoke out against taking our taxpayer money and subsidizing Amazon. That's what we did. We took our taxpayer money and gave millions of dollars that could have gone towards schools, infrastructure, all these things that we talked about tonight, and we just gave it to Amazon, just like that. Friends, it's important that we understand the issues here, and one of the things that many things that I've spoken out against, we need more transparency in our economic development authorities. We don't need shadow governments. We need more accountability. We have projects like, Go Virginia, for instance, is something that needs more transparency in it. We need to make sure that the government is not in the role of picking winners and losers like Amazon. We need to do things like my bill, which lowered the corporate income tax. Currently, Virginia is at 6%. We need to be down competitive with North Carolina and other companies that have phased that out. I will also say here I have a degree in business, double majored in corporate finance and business management. I also have a 100% rating with the National Federation of Independent Businesses, so thank you.
So here is the rub. Ron DeSantis, when he's recruiting a business to Florida, generally spends $3,000 per employee in tax rebates and other benefits. Virginia paid $20,000 per employee to get Amazon to come here, folks. Why? Because Virginia is not a good place to do business right now. Our right to work status is under threat. By the way, folks, if there is another Democrat governor, Terry McAuliffe, right to work is going to go away and we can kiss our business environment goodbye. Get ready to be Illinois. Friends, these are the kinds of issues that we must stand up for. We must win in November. We must get the cost of doing business down so that companies actually want to come. We must get the tax burden on Virginia families down so they'll stay. And we must create a thriving, rip-roaring economy with more jobs than people can take because they want to be here, not go elsewhere. And that's the challenge we have at Virginia right now. But we can turn this around, folks. We can turn it around.
I have a follow-up question on the economy. This is line 14 on your order of speaking candidates. All the candidates always talk about economic development and creating jobs. Creating jobs. Number one, it's a multi-part question. Does the government create jobs? And, depending on your answer to that question, you all want jobs in Virginia. Where do you expect these jobs to be coming from outside of jobs that depend on the federal government? We begin with Senator Chase.
Well, the obvious answer is no. The government, if we're doing it right, should not be creating jobs. But unfortunately, under Democratic leadership, that's what they do. They grow the size of government. I believe, and my voting record shows, that I have supported the Republican creed on this issue, shrinking the size of government, decreasing our taxes. I voted against every single tax increase, every single fee increase since I've been in the General Assembly. That's a 6-year record that you can count on. Now the question is, where do the jobs come from? As I mentioned earlier, I introduced legislation to lower the corporate income tax from 6% down to 2.5% and eventually phase that out to attract companies that are along the East Coast. We want to be competitive with those companies. But I also want to talk about accountability with economic development authorities. And I've been the leader on this issue in the General Assembly, making sure that we have full transparency, that seed money, that's just taxpayer money, which is invested by these shadow governments, which are basically appointed by Board of Supervisors and localities to spend our taxpayer money, and we need to make sure that it's more accountable.
Well, no, absolutely, government doesn't create jobs. However, government can certainly foster an environment that really helps with jobs, and I'll give you several examples. I mean, obviously, low taxes are very key, and when I was Speaker, we were able to have the second largest tax cut in Virginia history at $1 billion. We talked about regulations, and businesses will tell you all the time they're absolutely just so straddled down with regulations right now. But I will say, one of the things we don't do well is, I'll give you an example in my area, we have 14,000 construction jobs. We have 13 career and tech programs in construction. We have 385 marketing jobs. We have 20 CTE programs. We don't even ask business how we align our education system with what's really out there as far as jobs go. So yeah, there are things from the education system to regulations you can do to foster jobs, but government certainly doesn't create them.
All
All right, this is the issue. I mean, we have seen our economy shrivel. We have seen our economy under Democrat leadership go south. I think it was about 10 years ago, we were ranked 6th in the country. Think about that. Virginia was 6th in the country when it came to economic opportunity. Now, we're pushing about 16. At this rate, we are going to be challenging Alabama as the worst economy in the country because Democrats and one-party rule destroy everything that they touch. If you're a company right now who wants to flee California, you're not going to flee California for another baby version on the East Coast of California. We have got to compete, Republicans. All Virginians understand this, and if we are going to compete, we are going to make Virginia #1 in the country for our economy, and we are going to do that by phasing out the income tax. We had a debate just a couple days ago, and there were 2 candidates running for governor. They're here tonight, and they said no. They won't support phasing out the income tax. That's why I like having these debates, so that we can get the differences between us. Ask yourself this: who has the vision to phase out the income tax and make us #1 when it comes to our economy? I think I do.
No, the government doesn't need to create jobs. If they create jobs, who pays their salary? Isn't that funny? Your tax dollars. So what sense does it make that they create jobs? Governor McDonald, he was a very good governor here in the state of Virginia. And the 4 years that he was governor, Virginia was thriving. We had businesses coming here to this great commonwealth. So we know that we are able to get the jobs here in Virginia. So thank you.
So friends, Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam went to a different school than I went to. They went to a school where if they told you an untruth enough times, maybe you might actually believe it. And the untruth they've been telling us is that Virginia is great for business. Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Maryland have been kicking our rear ends. Their economies have been growing faster for 8 years. They've created substantially more jobs. And guess what? Our cost of living has gone up faster. And guess what happens as a result of that? Virginia families are moving away. We are a net exporter. Folks, this is a canary in the coal mine for all of us. We cannot shrink our way to prosperity. My 30-year business career is different than anybody else up here or on the Democrat side as well. I know how to get things done and get things moving. Right now, innovation in Virginia is 0. We have net 0 companies that have been created in the last 8 years. So step 1 is to provide a tax holiday for new companies in Virginia so they can get started. Step 2 is to go get companies that actually can thrive. But more importantly than that, step 3 is to elect a governor who knows how to do this. Friends, thank you very much.
So the answer is no. The way to growth is reduce taxes, reduce spending, and reduce the regulations. It's that simple. All you got to do is those 3 things. But to get there, you have to get elected first. And the problem that we have with getting elected is we're not expanding the base. And if we don't expand the base, we're not going to get there. And so one of the things that I've noticed is that we have to be thinking about what happens if it's not McAuliffe that's going to be the competitor. Jennifer Carroll Foy is out there. And one of the things that you're going to get thrown at you is, tell me about your white privilege. They've already tried that with me already. I did an interview, and they said, okay, you got that position in the Trump administration because you had privilege. And I said, have you ever picked cotton when you're 10 years old? And the answer was no, and it stopped. So what we've got to do is we got to get elected first. And the only way we're going to get elected is expanding the base. There's no one else who can do that except me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Question on Republican principles by a member from the Monticello Republican Women. The word conservative is a term, and before I do that, I want to introduce my son Aiden before we all depart. He's very patient with all the work that I do for the Republican Women of Virginia. what I do is for him, not necessarily for me, but for people like him who are growing up and looking at a bleak future. So I thank all of the candidates for everything that they're doing and stepping forward to make Virginia better for me and most importantly for him. Last question, Republican principles. The word conservative is a term that is often used broadly in place of the word Republican. How do you describe your brand of conservatism, and how does this translate as Republican principles? What is your vision to make our party great again in Virginia? What will Virginia look like after 4 years of your governorship?
Great question. I am a conservative. I come from the womb to tomb pro-life branch of the conservative brand. I am strong on the First Amendment because I fought for freedom of expression and freedom of religion. Terry McAuliffe and will continue, or Jennifer Carroll Foy, will continue to destroy our ability to practice our freedoms of religion. That's got to stop. We also have to protect the Second Amendment, and I think that all of us pretty much stick with the conservative principles. We all have that in common. But what we got to do is expand the voter base. We've got to reach out to the immigrant communities that are conservative. I can tell you, I've had conversations with all sorts of people that work just day-to-day jobs. They're Hispanics. And when I talk to them about what is happening to our Commonwealth, they agree with me. But nobody's ever reached out to them. We've got to reach out to that community. We've got to expand the voter base. Thank you.
I know I'm going to sound like a broken record. I'm a Christian, conservative, Republican in that order. Friends, I have a voting record to back that up. Whether we're talking about the life issue, whether we're talking about the Constitution, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, all the amendments, I have a voting record on business, you name it. I would say my brand of conservatism, I am a firebrand Republican. I have been called Trump in heels, and I wear that like a badge of honor. And actually had the privilege of meeting the president this weekend, and I got a fist bump from him, and he said, "I've heard about you." Friends, there's no mistake why I'm the front runner in 3 of 3 polls in this race, and why Terry McAuliffe targeted me once again today in his fundraising email, because he knows that I'm a threat to him. I'm going to bring in the women vote, whether we're in Northern Virginia, whether we're in Southwest Virginia, whether we're in Virginia Beach. I am a sassy, suburban woman, and that is exactly who we need. Those are the independent voters who are looking for a governor that represents them. I am Amanda Chase. I have been elected twice, and I will be elected governor of Virginia.
This is a good question. And I like this question because it forces candidates to try and not define conservative as being a conservative. It forces us to really dig into what we mean as conservatives. So there was a great philosopher back in the 60s named Russell Kirk, and he said, at the end of the day, a conservative is anyone who calls themselves such. Because if they have the courage to call themselves a conservative, then we should respect them for that. Kirk also said something that stuck with me my whole life. As a conservative, we believe that change should be a guiding light and not an all-consuming fire. And I think we see a clear contrast between the left and conservatives in 2020 and today, because we saw the all-consuming fire instead of the guiding light. My principle is that Virginia is going to be the best. We're going to phase out the income tax, and 4 years from now, Virginians are going to have #1 in schools, #1 in jobs, and we're going to have the safest communities. Because that's what being a conservative means, setting out a vision and making it happen, not just talking about it like the left.
And candidates, we are on line 15 in order of speaking, so we'll go to Mr. Youngkin now.
Great. Peter always jumps in front.
I didn't want to call him out.
I teed you up there, Delaney. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you. So friends, I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative. I'm an outsider. And I think that this outside perspective allows me to, in fact, bring a whole different view to what it takes to win in Virginia. Somebody asked me the other day, what kind of conservative are you? I said, well, I'm a constitutional conservative, I'm a social conservative, I'm a fiscal conservative. I guess that makes me a conservative. You know, at the end of the day, what we've done over the course of the last 10 years as a Republican Party in Virginia is figured out how to lose. And we need to run a different playbook. And the playbook we're running is, in fact, to go ahead engaging in coalitions now. We started in February. We're not waiting until June. We're actually engaging with women all across the Commonwealth. Women for Glenn. We started that in February. We're not waiting till June. We actually are backing candidates up and down the ballot. Why? Because we're not going to have a lonely victory in November. We're actually putting forth a big voter registration plan to kick off in May. Why? Because we got to register more Republicans to vote. We absolutely have to rally around this endeavor to win like never before. Folks, this is what we have to do to win, not just talk about it. Thank you.
Well, I bet I can say something I don't think y'all can say. My family tells me we voted against FDR all 4 times, so I thought think that's pretty good. Look, I am not an outsider. I am part of the greatest citizen legislature that was designed by the founders to be part-time. I believe in people. I think conservatives believe people can do amazing things if you turn them loose and cut their taxes and cut their regulation. I've been the guy in the arena, and I've said this often, you know, was speaker on one of the worst bills I ever saw, the Kathy Tron bill, that made abortion up to birth legal. I left the podium, went down to the floor, and gave the first speech in 60 years by a speaker to kill that bill. And so I think you got to make the call. Do you want someone who's actually done those fights, who's recruited candidates for the last 32 years? And I'm very proud of that fact. I think that experience really tells and is what we need.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what our forefathers fought for. And that's what we need to continue to fight for. And if you read your Bible and the Constitution, they lined up together. So as your governor, I will fight for our First and Second Amendments, for pro-life, voter integrity, because our foundation is eroding, and if we don't take control now, it could be over for us. But you know, if we unite, it doesn't matter which candidate wins, but for us to unite together as one, guess what will happen? We will have the biggest victory ever, November the 2nd. So that is what we're going to work for, and that's what we're going to do. When we last won in 2009, McDonald and that team, they worked together as one, and they won big. They swept the state.
We've now moved on to closing statements. That'll be the final line in your order of speaking tonight. And before we do, I think we should all please thank all of these candidates. As Delegate Cox just evoked Teddy Roosevelt, that Republican that I'm guessing the Cox family did vote for, that one Roosevelt. The guy in the arena, the man in the arena. Back then, women didn't have a vote because Democrats were blocking that all the time. Republicans were, right? So let's say the person in the arena, thank you for the sacrifice of your time, your money, sadly, sometimes your dignity as a candidate, to be that person in the arena. You have to be in it to win it, and you are willing to step forward. Thank you for that. We now move on to our final statements, beginning with Delegate Cox.
Well, certainly let me thank the VFRW, who I know throughout my 32 career could not have been more supportive. So you guys are great. I'll say simply this. I think on day one, Kirk Cox has the experience. You got 4 years to quickly turn things around. And I think everyone in this room agrees that one-party Democrat control over the last 2 years has absolutely ruined this state. And you really got to know what you really need to know what you're going to do. Remember, Virginia's governor has probably over 200 boards and commissions that you appoint. And you'll see Kirk Cox fire the parole board on day one. We talk about our colleges and universities and the woke culture, et cetera. Remember, every Board of Visitors member is picked by the governor. And if you know what you're doing, you can really change things. And finally, electability. And I've said this repeatedly. I come from the bluest district in the Republican district in the state. it really means something to have actually knocked those doors and actually won tough districts. I'm the guy that can take on Terry McAuliffe. I did it as a majority leader, and I'm the guy that can win and bring Virginia back. Thank y'all very much for this opportunity tonight. We really appreciate it.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. 13 weeks ago, I didn't have a Facebook account and I didn't have a Twitter account. 20,000 miles later, having met with thousands of Virginians, we've had an incredibly strong momentum that we've built. 2 Fridays ago, I was lucky enough to receive the endorsement of the Middle Resolution PAC. Monday, a week ago, at the Liberty University College Republican Forum, I received 47% of the straw poll. Last Sunday night, at the Faith and Freedom Forum, I received 61% of the straw poll. Folks, we've worked incredibly hard to bring people into the party to participate. Republicans, strong Republicans who want to participate in this convention. We have 17,500 people that have signed up as delegates. We had the strongest fundraising report of any candidate, Republican or Democrat. And we had an article last week in the Charlottesville paper that said, I'm the only one that can beat Terry McAuliffe. Folks, elections have consequences. And I so look forward to going to work for all of you as your governor, but I need your support on May 8th. I ask you to consider putting me as your top choice in the convention. Thank you very much.
We need a governor that's going to be fearless, that's going to go into battle, and that's me. Trump ran in 2016. Trump did not look like, he did not sound like any of those candidates that was running against him. So I want you to know that Octavia Johnson is the only candidate standing here that does not look like or sound like any other candidate. And guess what else? Trump became the president, and guess what else? He told you what he was going to do, and he got it done. So as your governor, I will get the job done. Thank you, and I ask for your support on May the 8th. If I'm not your first choice, I can be your second or third. Thank you.
Friends, there is only one candidate here with a conservative voting record. I am the only proven conservative. And listen, there are lots of different brands of Republicans. Let's just bring up a few names. Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney, President Bush, Donald J. Trump. There are different types of Republicans. We don't know on this stage who is what type of Republican. You know Amanda Chase. You know where I stand on the issue because I have a 6-year voting record that you can trust. There is a reason when I saw President Donald J. Trump this weekend, he gave me a fist bump and said, I've heard about you. Took my business card and put it in his pocket. And we're looking forward to meeting with his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, later this week. But most importantly, what I will tell you is that I have a backbone and that I know how to stand up to the left. And I can't wait to debate Terry McAuliffe because I know the issue no matter what it is because I served with him when I was in the Senate of Virginia. And it looks like I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm running to be your governor to protect the American dream. Virginia is a cradle of the American experiment that has created the greatest good in the world in the history of humanity. And I'm here to protect that dream because it started in Virginia. I love this Commonwealth. I love this country, and it's being destroyed by the socialist policies that are being put in place in Richmond by this governor and General Assembly. We got to stop it. The only way that we're going to be able to turn this around is, as I've pointed out, we've got to start expanding the voting base. We've got to reach out to those immigrant communities. We've got to reach out to the military communities, and we've got to reach out to every other working man and women. The only person here who has done work from the most menial to the highest levels when you're dealing with heads of state, ministers of defense, and setting The defense policy for half of the globe is me. I ask you to join me in this mission to protect the American dream. We cannot keep going into this insane, constant picking the same type of candidate, and we keep losing. We've got to change. We've got to expand the base, and we've got to reach out to a broader base. What I'd like to finish with is I ask you to join me in this mission to protect the American dream. Said differently, les pido que me acompañen en proteger este sueño americano. Muchas gracias, and thank you very much.
Okay, looks like I'm bringing it home, Larry. Remember how we started. When I stood up, I said, pay attention tonight. And keep asking yourself this question, and as you drive home tonight and you talk with your spouse, or you think about what you heard tonight, keep asking yourself, who among those vying to be your Republican nominee has a vision, a clear vision for how we're going to lead as Republicans, as conservatives? My vision is that Virginia should be the best. And yes, we are going to phase out the income tax. We're going to fundamentally change how we fund education. We're going to go to number one in education. We're going to protect your religious right, your religious freedom. But more importantly, none of this matters unless we can beat Democrats. And yeah, we have learned how to lose to Democrats. Last time around, Republicans, we spent $25 million to lose to Ralph Northam. We could probably spend $35 million or $100 million and still lose to Democrats unless we put forward a clear, winning vision that all of Virginia can rally around and support. I believe that Virginia should be the best, and Democrats can't match that. I hope to be your first choice this May 8th at our great Republican convention. Thank you.
And let's one more great round of applause for all of our candidates tonight. This concludes our debate, the VFRW debate. I really quickly, very encouraged that y'all didn't spend much time beating each other up. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't beat Terry McAuliffe up more. I had a couple of questions that I still wanted to ask that I couldn't get to. Do you think it was Ralph Northam in the hood or the other guy? Would you let your daughter date Justin Fairfax? Things like that. We couldn't really get to it, sadly. Oh, come on, grow up. But we'll have to do that another time. Martha is absolutely correct. It is the Republican women in this country and certainly in this region who are the driving force, the passion, and the energy behind the conservative movement. God bless you. Thank you for everything you do. I am honored to have been asked to be here tonight. And anytime you need me in the future, please don't hesitate. Thank you so much for letting me know.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you, Larry, for being here. And as a small token of our affection and thanks, we have this for you.
Thank you.
All right. I want to ask the candidates to just stand here so we may take your pictures, and I want to give them a round of applause and thank them so much for any one of you. We would be honored to represent us in the fall. Thank you very much. I want to thank Larry O'Connor, Paula Steiner. I also want to thank the Springfield Golf and Country Club. Please give them a round of applause for the wonderful dinner. And TV Worldwide with Dave Gardy. Please give them a round of applause also. They did the live stream tonight, and we will make arrangements with them and see how we can provide a recorded version of this online. Thank you very much. Good night.
And we have one more person to thank. I'd like you to thank my right-hand arm, Bonnie Burkhart, for all of the work she put in with me on this. Couldn't have done it without her, so thank you, Bonnie, for all you did.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.